Well, thanks everyone for having us. So excited to be here with Nicole. I came down all dressed this morning, and my first, second, and third grade kids said, "Mommy, why are you wearing such a fancy dress?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be on YouTube later today." So they wanted to know if they could search me. So tonight we'll be searching the live stream of this and proving that Mommy was on YouTube. I think Nicole said,
I have a third grader and she basically thinks I'm famous now, guys. It was wonderful. It was a highlight of my life.
So thank you for having us both. It's so great to be back in person. We appreciate you being here on a Thursday afternoon before a long holiday weekend with us because I'm Laura from the Trade Desk. I am on our client development team and so happy to be here with Nicole. When we were prepping for this session, she just has so many amazing things to talk about. We're going to focus a little bit on product innovation and strategy from a global level today. And I think you're going to hear a lot of great things that you haven't heard before. So excited for the conversation. Nicole is the VP of Global Brands and focuses a lot of her time on the cereal business. But to get us started, could you tell us a little bit more about your role, how long you've been at Kellogg's, and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined Kellogg's about 3 years ago in spring of 2019. I'm currently the VP on global brands for cereal, so focused on our cereal categories. We are the number one share leader globally by a long shot. So just over 30 share points globally. Very, very proud of those results. And it's a great question on what I do. We all are CPG experts in this room. So every company has a little bit of a blend of, who do you have in the markets? Who do you have in the regions? And then who do you have in what we now call the center of our business? And that's really where I sit, is in the center. And we're pretty choiceful now about where I have a small team, but we're pretty choiceful about where we decide to play and what brands are truly led and collaborated from the center versus our regional gems.
Love that. When we were prepping and we talked a little bit about your background and how you got here today. So you mentioned you have some sales experience and would love to kind of hear a little bit more about how your track to get to your marketing role on a global scale. And did you take anything from your sales experience? And do you find that those things you learn come out in what you're doing on a daily basis today?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I grew up in sales, guys, for a long, long time. My very first job was actually at a retailer. So I worked, if anyone knows Long's drugstores on the West Coast, my paycheck came from Prism Merchandising Group. And I worked in Long's, and I was so fortunate that very early in my career, I stumbled into this thing called CPG. It just amazed me where I was working in cosmetics at the time, but if I took a mascara and it wasn't at knee level anymore and I put it at eye level, I sold like twice as much. And I'm like, I am hooked. This is wonderful. But the first 15 years of my career were out in the field with customers. So sales support, I did category management. I ran a retail team out there, which was great, managed a team of 32 people when I was 24 years old. So did that. And I always thought, so first 15 years in sales, and then I moved into internal roles, more strategic roles, channel strategy, brand strategy, RGM, which is very near and dear to my heart. If you do not have that skill set or that passion, I would say fake it till you make it on RGM. You need to know it. So it was great, but I always thought I'd hang up my sales boots, right? Like I'm coming in the office. I don't need to sell anyone anymore. And guess what? Like I am selling harder now than I ever did when I was with the customer. So I'd say the thing that I really took with me is remembering that you do have customers out there. You have customers and clients, and really thinking about how they can win, like how you help them win, kind of walking in their shoes a little bit is super helpful.
Love that. I think it's, we all get into our internal worlds and remembering who's actually buying it, or sometimes I think just remembering that we ourselves are consumers and trying to think about the experience you have with a brand is always really interesting. So I've been to Battle Creek a few times, but in your experience at Kellogg's, have you ever toured the plant or seen how the cereal's made?
I have.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
It's a lot harder than you think, guys. But we were just sharing a story backstage, and it's something we don't talk to our consumers a lot about. I think we can talk to them more about it. But you guys, Rice Krispie cereal is made out of rice. It's the coolest thing if you haven't seen it. It's rice, and then we put it in a cooker, and it comes out and it's cooked rice. And then it goes through this really cool popping process. And that's how you get the product that you see on the shelf today. But we're just starting to talk to our consumers a little bit more about that food story and that culinary story that's so important around our ingredients, and for cornflakes, it's one grain, one flake. That's a very powerful story that we need to be telling around the globe on that wonderful brand.
And does that story resonate and carry through in most global markets? Do you have some brands where you have to be very poignant about what's resonating, and other brands where the same message goes across markets?
Yeah, 1,000%. So if you go to a market like Mexico, cornflakes is actually our strongest brand there. Not surprising in Latin America, where corn is a very important grain for that market. But the message is different when you go to India, where they like to eat cereal with warm milk. So milk should not be cold, it should be warm. That's what they put in their cereal. And cornflakes don't hold up very well in warm milk. So yeah, that messaging is going to be a little different depending on what market we're in.
So would love to shift gears just a minute. I mean, Kellogg's has some of the most iconic cereal brands in the world, as we talked about in the beginning. But I know you guys have thought a lot about, and over the years have had a lot of product innovation. So how do you think about looking at a brand, and what's the process you go through to decide this brand needs a product innovation, or what leads you to think that, and kind of how do you start that process? And then can you take us a little bit through it, and maybe we'll talk about an example in a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to innovation, I think we made a little bit of a shift change in Kellogg. Again, this is when I was prior to this role, really about innovation being such an important driver of the category. So decomposition of what innovation did for the category, and we identified it as a place where we needed to play very strongly and get more of our fair share of innovation to keep that interest in the category, keep that household penetration up. When it comes to the process, I feel very fortunate that I am in a center role, as we call it, because I get to see innovation plans all around the world. So when we think about best process, the first thing that any company can do more of is really sharing of what you have. So we've got great products that are launching in Europe, for example, that would play very well. And our continental Europe markets would play very well in our Mexican market. So one of the things that I do is help that sharing and help facilitate that sharing across markets. The other principle I would say that is maybe personal to me, and it's very tough as a marketer, but the best innovation sessions I've ever run, we actually don't think about brand first. We think about occasion first. So within Kellogg, we have our eating occasions. And it's such a different mindset when you think about something like, I heard snack. Whoever said snack is the most important meal of the day. Oh, no. Okay. Then we're okay. We're good. We're right there. We're right there. Yeah, no, but when you think about something like a mid-morning snack, how cool is it to take off the brand, take off the category, and think like your consumer? It's 10 o'clock. What am I going to eat? And if you approach your innovation that way, I think that's where we've had some really great success on coming up with some new great products.
I love that approach. And I think that's really interesting because it kind of takes some of the bias out and some of the how you feel about something. So I think that's really nice. But how does that work when you do those global innovation or those innovation sessions? Are they global? Do you do them by region? Just give a little bit of how you guys approach that.
Yeah, I would say both. And so I've probably led more market innovation sessions. Again, newer to the role, we've done global innovation sessions, which have been so successful for us in what we call innovation acceleration. So we do it both ways. And I have one other thought for you though. The one, because I have in my brain, I've got a marketing brain, I have an RGM brain and all this. The other thing when we talk about innovation, and this is a principle that I carry through is it's when you think about profitability, I think a lot of times we get hung up on, am I going to make money on this? Or what is the margin? Or what is this opportunity? And that cannot come into the equation too early. So the best way to think about, or the way we like to think about innovation opportunities is what's the opportunity? And then can Kellogg profitably service that opportunity? And I think that's the right mind frame when it comes to margin. Because there's things you're going to have to say no to because you can't profitably service it. But you're going to find gems that really fit with your company strength, your brand equity, all those wonderful pieces, and that's what you have to go after in a very focused way.
I love that. And we talked about Special K and a little bit of the 2-year product innovation journey you've been on. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how it's coming to life globally? And did you find some gems along the way that really brought it to where it is today?
Yeah. And I have, if we're going into Special K.
Let's ask, we wanted to ask a couple questions.
Yeah, for you that are in the audience. So I'm curious for you guys, just by show of hands. So who has, think about a scale in your house. Who's weighed themselves in like the past month? Okay. How about the last week? How about the last day? Okay. So not too bad.
Oh, yeah.
So
it went down for all of you online. It went down and down. Yeah, we ended up with just a couple.
Yeah, and I did wear my Special K red for you today, guys, which is wonderful. And it's such an amazing brand for us. It's our number 2 brand. It has a very, very strong heritage in dieting. That is when Special K really hit its peak. I don't know if any of you remember, we had a pinch and inch campaign. We had a 2-week challenge. We had a drop a jean size, and man, we did a great job communicating that message. The issue that we have now is that message is no longer relevant with our consumers. And so we started a journey again before I was in this role, but really to take Special K and make it relevant again, not only for older generations that knew it as a dieting brand, but also for our younger generations. When we think about that. So innovation was part of that journey, but our very first stop was what we called consumer illumination, talking to our consumers. And I think my favorite quote, I'm not sharing any videos, my favorite quote was a gentleman probably in his 50s. And he said, pinch an inch, I can grab a slab. Like, and he goes, Special K is not the brand for me, because that's all he could remember. So yeah, we definitely started with our consumers first. But the very next step was innovation, and that exactly what I said earlier, that sharing of like, okay, what do we have in the pipeline? What do we like? How do we accelerate in those spaces and get further along on things like maybe a high fiber SKU, stuff like that. So a little bit closer in innovation there. And then from there, we really put together that global brand book, our brand foundations, to say, hey, we're all going to align on this brand. We cannot turn it around if we think we have, in our case, we have 4 different regions. If we think we have 4 different answers to this problem, like it's not gonna turn out well, guys. So a lot of collaboration to really get on the same page with, where we wanted to go in the future. So we did that work. Another round of innovation, and this time more breakthrough innovation to the category, really pushing into the health space and what we call purposeful health, which is so important for the brand. And then into the culinary story. So our food story was kind of where we've wrapped up now.
So what do you mean by the culinary story? Like the ingredients? Can you talk just a little bit more about what that means to Kellogg's?
Yeah, when we think about so we do have a culinary group within Kellogg, but it's really thinking and putting food at the center of what we're doing and not forgetting that. They love our Special K brand, but we want them to love our food just as much.
I have been to the kitchen in Battle Creek, actually. So there truly is a culinary kitchen where they test food and people get a chance to test it. So that's amazing.
Battle Creek actually has some good restaurants, guys. I just want you to know.
Actually.
Mm-hmm. Not a culinary capital, but I have found some wonderful places to eat.
It's a short drive. Talk to me just a little bit about, you mentioned in that process, the globalization and how you think about that. So with Special K, you came up with one overarching theme, but then how do you think about, were there different taglines or messages that had to be given by market, or no, just, I was like, what?
It's a very strong answer, but I would say ideally, no. That's right. If we were doing this right, because this world is connected nowadays. So if we're doing something, and right, if our packaging in South Africa looks very, very different than our packaging in Europe, consumers are going to know if the product is different, if the flavors are different. So we really have to be on point with kind of where we want to go. We may vary. The biggest variation we do by market is not a little bit around flavor, but it's more around health. So depending on the market, you have Australia, that's a very, very health forward market. So their assortment will look different. They'll be more health focused versus the US. Might be a little less health focused, but they're all living under the same brand architecture, just activating in different ways. I think that's the best way to say it. But I'm not going to kid you guys. We have, I was just on a very lively debate yesterday on how you do have a consistent brand idea across markets when markets like France and the US are very different. How do you pull that off? So lots of open debates on what that looks like in execution.
You made a really good point about how connected this world is. And as we think about technology today and the way that we consume media, there's such a blurred line too about the connection between different generations. So the younger generation definitely approaches their relationship with brands and how they receive a brand in a much different way than what I'll call the older generation, which would be myself. So, So tell me a little bit about how Kellogg's is thinking about that generation and that connection, knowing that that's truly what they're looking for from brands is connection rather than just product.
Yeah, and I think the biggest initiative for us is really around what we call our ESG, environmental, social, governmental initiatives. So at Kellogg's, we have a Better Days Promise. And the hard part, the opportunity that younger generation, at first they were teens. It's good. They've grown up and they have kids now, and they're deciding what their kids are going to eat. So really, when we think about being purpose-led at Kellogg, we're doing a good job about doing that at a corporate level, but we have not yet executed that at a consumer level in the way we really want to. But we have some great programs. So in the US, probably our biggest program is Mission Tiger that we do with Tony. It's all about middle school sports and getting your kids active and all those wonderful things. So that's our answer is really, we need to lean into ESG and those purpose-driven initiatives faster and harder and figure out the right way to connect with our audiences through the funnel on our ESG plan.
And in the world that we're all approaching, I know media activation is not your not your job, but understanding the consumer and having that connection and really figuring out how you gain that first party data and that relationship with them to learn about them, learn across their, you have an amazing portfolio of brands. So how is Kellogg's thinking about that and what we're not supposed to use anymore, the cookieless future, but as we approach this world where everything will be about choice and privacy and the relationship you have, like how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, and I mentioned I have a counterpart who's also Nicole. So we have the two Nicoles. Other Nicole at Kellogg, Nicole Vincent, is our center of excellence on media and some of those things. So we collaborate a lot on that. I think where I sit on the choices that we make, again, talking about those hot debates around ESG, there's so many different causes or so many different things that we could go after, and we have our brands. And so right now it's a really live debate about what's the role of the brand, how does ESG play, and how do we do this in a way that's very authentic. Pringles does a Movember program that's wonderful. So anyway, we have good examples, but we're certainly just starting that journey.
How do you determine what is going to be that connection point from a brand to your consumer?
Next question. No. I think it's tough. I think it depends on who you're going after and what that looks like and what you're trying to do so it'll just vary. We have 22 cereal brands in the US, for example. So it's a lot. So it'll vary by brand.
Okay. That's fair. So I know everyone's sick of COVID, but I would love to hear, like, COVID was a big game changer in how everyone consumed food, how the breakfast and the mealtime changed. Can you just talk a little bit about the highs and lows for Kellogg's and COVID? Because there were definitely some highs, and and then the things have changed a lot. So how are you ebbing and flowing with that as consumers continue to ebb and flow and back to the office and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's time for us. So number one, for packaged goods company with food that's shelf stable, there was absolutely a tailwind within COVID, not surprising. People stocked up their shelves. They came back to eat cereal, which was fantastic. We have not necessarily retained all of those consumers, which is okay. But I think for us, the point we need to get to is I was on Squawk Box the other day. It's like, oh, we're calling it the new normal. This is the new normal. And he's like, guys, this is just the normal. Like, this is just it. Office, people in offices, I think its occupancy is like 40%. This is it. And so I think we've been waiting for that moment for things to be over so we can really dig in and figure out, how consumers are acting and what they need from us. And the moment's here. So the biggest things on my plate are for sure thinking about convenience. So for consumers, if they're in their home, it's much easier for them to make eggs and bacon and some of those prepared breakfasts versus grabbing a bowl of cereal. So at Kellogg, we're thinking really hard about convenience and what that looks like I won't call it the new normal, in the normal. Yeah.
What do you think are the other brands that play into the cereal category? So when you think about your consumer of frosted mini wheats and, there's always this, how do we get them into another brand? So what are the other Kellogg's brands, the most relevant brands that play into how your consumer consumes frosted mini wheats, and where would you then want to show them something else from the rest of the portfolio?
Yeah, it really goes with your life cycle. So hopefully we're recruiting you young, which is great. Fruit Loops is probably one of our youngest brands. Going back to the plant, the technology behind how we make Fruit Loops is awesome. It's really cool to see in person. So the loops come out, they're like this big, guys. They're tiny. These are like hard little rocks. And they go through a puffing process to become the loop that you see in your cereal bowl. But it's one of our brands that actually travels decently well across geographies. So it's a place that a brand will use to drive our emerging market strategy. But yeah, hopefully you come in with Fruit Loops and kind of graduate yourself all the way up to all brand, I think would be. That's the end of the line. Once you've had all brand, guys, I don't know what to tell you.
I called myself the older generation before, but I am not at all brand yet, just for the record.
See, I brightened your day, didn't I? There you go.
Thank goodness.
Many years away.
Could you just tell us, like, what's been one of your favorite either travel stories or favorite moments at Kellogg's that you've had in the last 3 years?
It's a tough one. Outside of being with people again, I think that's pretty amazing. Favorite moment with Kellogg's. We've talked about the plant tours. We've done that. I would say probably getting to see our Brazilian business. So I did right before COVID, I had the opportunity to go down to Brazil. We own a local company down there. There is Perti, and it's wonderful. So in Brazil, they eat cookies for breakfast. You guys, my girls would love it. So their cookie aisle is absolutely enormous, but it's also very, very complex. So we went down to Brazil to really think about, how do we handle that category? What do we do? And how do we make the most of that cookies business?
When you, I would love to eat cookies for breakfast if it was okay. But what do you think about, it doesn't seem like you spent your whole career in global. So when you think about having a background in the US side of marketing or sales, what were the challenges that you felt, or what do you see as the differences between US into global, and how you think about that in your day-to-day life?
That's good. I think the thing in the US that we probably don't take advantage of enough is the diversity and the number of customers. And we talked a little bit about that earlier today. What channels are you going after? Is it B2B? Is it a B2C? Am I playing in C-store? What am I doing in these other spaces? But once you start seeing other markets, so France, for example, has about 6 retailers. That's it. So if you want to take price in France, if you want to do anything, it's going to be very, very difficult because you do not have the power as a manufacturer that you might want. So I'd say in the US, just coming out of the US and getting to see other markets has really given me the perspective that, wow, like we can do more in the United States market for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we do have so much choice and so many different factors that play into it. We've talked today a little bit about how you let insights drive what you're doing, how when you talked about Special K, there were those points along the way where you get the insights, you innovate. You get the insights, you innovate. So knowing that, what are you most excited about in the future in that kind of area and what you're doing in the cereal business?
There's a couple things, and I would say when it comes to putting insights at the core, that's always where you start, right? But I think it's important to not forget the fundamentals. So we've gotten the furthest within Kellogg by talking to our consumers and not forgetting about things like in-home study and what that looks like to really understand your brand and understand those pain points. The thing I'm most excited about would be in the advanced analytics and AI space, because we all know that one of my favorite stories is prior to Kellogg, but I was at a consumer research study and we were talking about candy and gum and all these things. And we happened to be with a person that said, oh, I never eat bad food. I never eat anything unhealthy. Never, never, never. That's good. On the floor next to her, she had her purse, and in her purse were bags of Doritos. And I'm not saying Doritos are bad, but I was like, I don't think she's telling us the truth, guys. So it's that blend of that, the consumer piece of it, you know, what they want to be true, what they tell you is true, what is actually true. But we have these wonderful analytics. So we work with a lot of companies. Fractal is one of our companies, a couple other vendors, but we do a lot of work on, well, what did customers actually do? So if I take mini wheats, I'd never do this, but I take all brand and I remove all brand from the shelf, what else are they going to buy? And analytics can tell you that. We have that power. So it's just harnessing the power of the analytics to really model out what scenarios could look like. So that's kind of fun. So the AI part.
That's really interesting. Good thing I don't have to worry about if you took all brand off that I wouldn't know what to buy.
It'll be there when you need it.
Fantastic. Just a kind of a last question, when you think about it more from a global lens, like what market in the cereal category are you most excited about growing or seeing something new in the next few years? Visiting.
It's like your kids. You can't have a favorite. They're listening to me. No, I would say in our categories projected to be like cereal, right? We're talking about a category may or may not grow. We'll see. But we've got some really developed markets that have really high per capita consumption. I think I'm most excited about, they're like our middle markets. So we do market archetyping. So we have emerging markets, we have developed markets, which is like the US and Canada, Australia and the UK. And then we have these markets in the middle. So they know what cereal is. They know what our category is. They're eating cornflakes. They're eating a couple brands. India is a great example of this. And all I think about is, well, what else would they eat? What other brands can travel to those markets to really continue to drive growth for both the category and Kellogg?
The woman in the back mentioned she snacks on cereal all day. So do you find in different markets that you have to, I don't mean all day, just it's a snack of choice, the crunchiness. So do you find that you have to change the messaging of how you think in different global markets? Do you ever go with that snacking message versus the breakfast message? In the current format, no, because breakfast is your meal. So we're really focused on that, delivering that nutrition. I think 40% of people eat fruit with cereal, which is a great statistic. You're getting not only cereal, milk, whatever choice you have can be plant-based. You're also getting fruit with it. So we're really proud of that nutritional profile that we have for breakfast. But we do know people want a snack. And where we've had the most success with snacking is you can't snack on a flake. I'm just going to say it. A flake of cereal is not snackable. But getting into other shapes and formats that are really appropriate for maybe a mid-morning snack where it's a little bit healthier, or an afternoon snack where you can be a little naughtier. More indulgent. I had one last question and it just escaped me, but I think that's interesting to think about how you incorporate cereal differently in your day and how it can be a part of all aspects of your day.
And cereal is just one little bit of what we do. So actually from a snacking perspective, that we have a ton of snacking brands. So we play very nicely in the sandbox together.
I think the one thing that was really one of the biggest things I learned from spending some time with you was just the final point about what a plant-based focused company you are, and how so many of your products do start from the plant. And I don't think most of us in this room think about that. And so, I think that's a really interesting thing to tie to what you're doing at Kellogg's.
Yeah, 1000%. So plant-based is here to stay. We're very proud of our heritage in plant-based, as well as like, if you think about sustainability in our cardboard boxes, pretty recyclable. We're doing pretty good there. Still pushing further in that area. But yeah, it's a great part of what we do.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with all of us today. You have so much to share, and we really appreciate you being here. And thank you everyone for being with us.
Thank you.